They say no one can love you like your mother does. But what happens when the child she raised, the heart she once carried within her, forgets she even exists? This is my story. The story of how my son forgot me, not because I died, but because he found someone new. My name is Mary Thompson. I live alone in a small house on the edge of a quiet neighborhood in Dallas, Texas. It's peaceful here. Birds sing in the morning, and the sunset paints my kitchen walls gold. But silence, it's the kind that wraps around your heart and whispers that you're alone. There was a time when this house was alive. Ethan's laughter filled every room, his sneakers scattered by the door, and his deep voice calling out, "Mom, have you seen my jacket?" I would roll my eyes, pretending to be annoyed, but secretly, I loved those moments, because they meant my boy still needed me. When my husband, Robert, passed away, Ethan was just 21. He held my hand at the funeral and said, "Mom, I'll never leave you alone." And I believed him with every fiber of my being. Because mothers, we don't doubt our children's promises. We build our worlds around them. Then came Sarah. She was kind, sweet, ambitious. And I was happy that my son had found someone who made him smile again. When they got married, I stood there watching him, his eyes shining as he said his vows. I remember whispering to myself, he's grown now, but he'll always be my baby. For the first few months after their wedding, everything was beautiful. Ethan called every day, sent me pictures of the meals Sarah cooked, and came over every Sunday for dinner. But slowly, the rhythm changed. The calls became shorter, the visits less frequent, and the excuses endless. "Mom, we're busy this weekend. Sarah's parents invited us. Work's been crazy, Mom. I'll call you soon." I smiled through every call, saying, "That's all right, honey." But when I hung up, my smile fell apart. One evening, I made his favorite dinner, roasted chicken with mashed potatoes, and waited. The clock struck 9, then 10. The food grew cold, but my hope didn't. Until finally my phone buzzed. A message. Not a call. Just 5 words. "Sorry, Mom, can't make it." That night, I didn't cry. I just sat there, staring at his empty chair, listening to the ticking clock and realizing my world had quietly changed. It wasn't anger I felt. It was something heavier, something softer, the kind of ache only mothers know, the kind that doesn't scream. It just stays deep inside, like a quiet shadow that never leaves. And that was the night I understood. Sometimes love doesn't die. It just gets forgotten. The next few weeks passed quietly. I tried not to call Ethan too often. I didn't want to sound needy. I told myself, give him space, Mary. He has his own life now. But deep down, I missed the sound of his laughter echoing through the house. I missed hearing Mom from across the room. Every corner of my home carried his memory. His old baseball cap still hung by the door, his childhood photo stood on the kitchen counter, and his old guitar rested in the corner, collecting dust. Sometimes I'd run my hand over it, remembering the way he used to play for me after dinner, singing off-key just to make me laugh. One afternoon, I decided to bake his favorite chocolate pie, the same one I made on his birthdays. I took pictures, wrapped it carefully, and drove all the way to his house. It was a sunny Sunday, and I thought, he'll be home. He'll be happy to see me. When I reached there, I saw Ethan's car in the driveway. But when I knocked, it was Sarah who opened the door. Her smile faded for a second before she forced it back on. "Oh, Mary! Hi! You should have called," she said, holding the door just halfway open. I smiled and held up the pie. "I made Ethan's favorite. Thought I'd surprise him." She hesitated. Ethan's busy right now. He's working on something." From behind her, I heard a faint laugh, Ethan's laugh, and a woman's voice, probably one of Sarah's friends. It felt like the air left my lungs for a moment. "Oh," I said softly. "That's all right, dear. Just tell him Mom stopped by." She nodded quickly. "Of course, Mary. I'll tell him." And she closed the door gently, but that soft sound felt heavier than a storm. Driving back home, the pie sat untouched on the passenger seat. I kept glancing at it, my eyes blurry with tears. When I reached home, I placed it on the counter, untouched, uneaten. Later that night, I threw it away. The smell of chocolate made my heart ache. Days turned into weeks. Ethan didn't call. Not once. Sometimes I'd see pictures of him and Sarah on social media, smiling, traveling, celebrating. Their happiness should have made me happy, but instead, it reminded me how easily a son can move on while a mother still waits in silence. One morning, I woke up to find the first signs of winter creeping in. Frost on the window, cold air filling the house. I wrapped myself in Robert's old sweater and sat by the heater, holding my phone. I typed a message. "Hey, sweetheart, I miss you. Hope you're eating well." But then I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't send it. I just deleted it. That's when I realized the distance between me and my son wasn't just miles anymore. It was invisible, but wide enough to lose a lifetime of love. Winter deepened that year. The days grew shorter, the nights colder, and the silence around me somehow louder. Each morning, I'd make myself a cup of coffee and sit by the window, watching the frost melt off the glass as the sun tried to warm the world. It never really reached my heart, though. Then came February 16th, my birthday. I hadn't celebrated it in years, not since Robert passed away. But every year, Ethan would still call. He'd say, "Happy birthday, Mom. Don't think I forgot." Even if it was late, he always remembered. So that morning, I dressed a little nicer. I put on the blue sweater he once gifted me for Mother's Day, the one with tiny embroidered flowers near the sleeves. I made myself a small cake, just like I used to when he was a kid. I set 2 plates, 2 forks, out of habit, not hope. And then I waited. The clock ticked through the afternoon. The sun began to fade, stretching long shadows across the kitchen floor. I checked my phone more times than I'd like to admit. No call, no message, nothing. By evening, I told myself maybe he was busy. Maybe he'd called before bed. I made some tea and turned on the TV just for the noise. That's when a notification popped up on my phone. Ethan Thompson updated his status. Dinner date with my beautiful wife, Heart. My eyes stayed fixed on those words. Dinner date. My birthday. I don't remember crying. I just sat there, feeling a hollow ache in my chest. Not because he forgot the date, but because he didn't even realize what he'd missed. Later that night, there was a knock on my door. For a moment, my heart raced. I thought, it's him. But when I opened it, it was my neighbor, Mrs. Carter, holding a small bouquet. "Happy birthday, Mary," she smiled. "I baked you something." Her kindness was like a bandage over a wound that wouldn't heal. I thanked her, invited her in, but even as we talked, my eyes kept glancing at my phone. Still silent, still dark. When she left, I sat by the window again. Outside, the snow was falling softly under the streetlights. I thought about Ethan, where he was, if he was laughing, if he even remembered me. And for the first time, I whispered something I never thought I would. Maybe he doesn't need me anymore. The words felt like glass in my throat, sharp and cold, because deep down, every mother knows, no matter how old her son gets, she never stops being his home. But what happens when that home is no longer needed? That night, I blew out the single candle on my small cake alone, and in the flicker of its light, I promised myself I wouldn't reach out again. If he ever wanted to remember me, he'd have to find me in the silence he left behind.
It was almost spring when I saw Ethan again. The trees outside were starting to show the first hints of green, and the air carried that soft smell of new beginnings, but not for me. I was sitting in the living room, knitting quietly, when I heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. At first, I thought it was the mailman, but then I heard a familiar laugh, a laugh I hadn't heard in months. Ethan's. My hands froze. For a moment, I didn't know whether to smile or cry. I stood up, smoothed my sweater, and waited as the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, there he was, my son, standing in front of me with the same boyish smile he had when he was 10 and the same eyes that used to look for me first in every crowd. "Hey, Mom," he said softly, like nothing had ever changed. Behind him stood Sarah, holding a baby, my granddaughter. My heart stopped. I didn't even know she'd been born. "Oh my God," I whispered. "She's beautiful." Sarah smiled politely, but her tone was distant. "We were just passing by. Thought we'd stop for a few minutes." A few minutes. That's all I was worth now. A few minutes. I took the baby in my arms, and for a moment everything else disappeared. She smelled like milk and lavender. Her tiny fingers curled around mine. I felt tears sting my eyes, this little soul carrying my blood, and yet a stranger. "Her name's Lily," Ethan said proudly. "Sarah's mom helped with the nursery. You should see it. It's beautiful." His words pierced me in ways he didn't notice. He hadn't asked me, hadn't even told me she was expecting. Every milestone, every moment, I'd missed them all. "That's lovely," I managed to say, forcing a smile. But inside, my heart whispered, why wasn't I there? After a few more pleasantries, Sarah glanced at her watch. "We should get going, Ethan. The drive back's long." He nodded. I walked them to the door, still holding the memory of Lily's warmth in my arms. "Mom," he said before leaving, "we'll visit again soon." I smiled. "I'll be here." But as their car disappeared down the road, I knew he didn't mean soon. That night, I sat on the porch under the dim porch light, watching the stars flicker faintly in the sky, and I whispered to no one, "She's beautiful, Ethan, just like you were when you still needed me." Days turned into weeks, and weeks slipped quietly into months. Spring came and went, and summer sunlight filled the town, but my house remained cold. Every morning, I still made 2 cups of coffee, one for me, one for the memory of the son who used to sit across the table. I'd talk to the empty chair sometimes, not because I'd gone mad, but because silence has a way of speaking when no one else does. I saw Ethan's life unfolding online. Pictures of Lily's first steps, videos of birthday parties, family barbecues, and I was nowhere in them. Just a face he once loved, now faded into the background of his new life. One evening, I sat on the porch and looked at the mailbox. There was a time when he'd write me letters, crayon drawings, Mother's Day cards, Notes that said, "I love you, Mom." Now, even junk mail came more often than my son's words. But I never hated him, not even once. I just missed him in a way words couldn't explain. A kind of missing that sits heavy in your bones, that eats at your breath every time you see his smile in old photographs. Then, one night, the phone rang. It startled me. For a moment, my heart jumped. I picked it up, and before saying a word, I just listened to the sound on the other end. His voice. "Mom?" It was shaky. Quiet. Something in his tone sent a chill down my spine. "Ethan? Is everything all right?" There was a pause. Then I heard him take a deep breath and say words that made my heart stop. "Mom, Sarah's gone." The world fell silent. I couldn't breathe. For a moment, I didn't even understand. "What do you mean, gone?" I whispered. She passed away last night. There was an accident." His voice broke into pieces. I didn't know who else to call. The line went quiet again. Only our breathing filled the space between us, the same silence that had once separated us, now holding us together again. "I'm coming, Ethan," I said softly. And for the first time in years, I didn't sound like a stranger. I sounded like his mother again.
The next morning, I packed a small bag. A few clothes, a photograph of Ethan as a child, and the blue sweater he once gave me. That's all I needed. Not because I didn't have more, but because I didn't have anyone else. The road to his house felt longer than it should have. Maybe because I carried years of silence in my heart. When I finally arrived, the house looked different, brighter, newer, but colder somehow. Ethan opened the door. His eyes were swollen, his voice barely there. He looked like a man holding his world together with shaking hands. "Mom," he whispered. And then, without another word, he fell into my arms, the way he used to as a boy after scraping his knee or losing a toy. Only this time, it wasn't a bruise on his skin. It was on his soul. I held him tightly. Years of distance melted in that single moment. No words, no apologies, just tears, and the quiet understanding that love never really dies. It only waits for you to come home. Later that night, when Lily was asleep, I found Ethan sitting on the couch, staring at nothing. The house smelled faintly of flowers, the kind people bring when someone leaves forever. He looked up at me. "Mom, I don't know how to do this." I sat beside him, placed my hand over his, and said softly, "You don't have to know how, sweetheart. You just have to breathe. And when you can't, I'll breathe for you." He broke down again, and I just held him, rocking him the way I did when he was small, singing the same lullaby I thought he'd forgotten. That night, as I tucked Lily into bed, she stirred in her sleep and murmured, "Nana." Tears filled my eyes. It was the first time anyone in that house had called me that. Standing by her crib, I whispered to the darkness, "Maybe God took Sarah, but he sent me back to my son." And for the first time in years, the silence in my heart finally exhaled.